fair representation of democracy in this country, but it's not the result I was hoping for.
Dengar semula tentang projek tadi yang saya dengar anak menantu saya nak supaya Yang Berhormat ulang semula supaya kita boleh ambil tindakan terhadap Yang Berhormat.
Ya, silakan. Wani betul.
Wani ulang balik. Sila ulang balik dalam dan luar dewan.
Ini perkara sudah diketahui seluruh Malaysia. Ya, yang dimasukkan ialah
Ulang balik.
Ya,
Ulang balik tadi.
Tak berani.
Ulang balik.
Ya.
Ulang balik.
Handset minggu depan saya sudah sebut. Ya. Kalau nak ambil tindakan terhadap saya minggu depan saya sudah sebut. Boleh cek handset. Ya, bagus. Boleh cek handset, bagus. Boleh cek handset.
Ulang sekarang lah. Kalau berani ulang sekarang.
Saya sudah cakap. Bagus, boleh cek handset.
Yang Berhormat Kulim Bandar Baru, jangan buat kacau.
Ada parti politik apabila dalam pilihan raya mereka kempen
Standing order.
kata tentang bersih.
Standing order.
Mereka adalah bersih. Mereka adalah stable.
Disebut bagus.
Ya.
36.6. Seorang ahli tidak boleh mengeluarkan sangkaan jahat ke atas sesiapa disebut paguh secara individu. Saya minta tarik balik ataupun minta maaf sebab kalau berani duduk di luar.
So first is introduction of democracy. The term of democracy comes from the Greek word demos, which means people, and kratos, which means democracy. Malaysia practices parliamentary democracy with constitutional monarchy. His Majesty the King is the head of state and Prime Minister as the head of government. Parliament is the most important institution in a country which practices the principle of democracy. Malaysia is a federation comprising the 11 states of Malaya, the Borneo states of Sabah and Sarawak, and 3 federal territories operating within a constitutional monarchy under the Westminster system. And it is categorized as a representative democracy, which means people will vote for a representative through the general election, which will be held every 5 years. Next, we go to types of democracy. In this group project, we discuss about 2 types of democracy, which is direct democracy and indirect democracy. Direct democracy is a form of government in which citizens rather than representatives decide the laws and policies that govern them. Direct democracy contrasts with a representative democracy, where representatives make policy decisions on the behalf of the citizens. State referendum are an example of direct democracy in the US. Referendum allow the public to decide a particular issues by a direct vote. As example, in Switzerland, without needing to register, every citizen receives ballot paper stamped information brochure for each vote. Switzerland has a direct democracy system and votes are organized about 4 times a year. Next, we go to indirect democracy, also called representative democracy, which has long been practiced in Malaysia since its independence. Indirect democracy is where citizens choose others to represent them, making important decisions on their behalf, which means the people vote for a government through regular election with secret ballots and a choice of candidates. Government is accountable to the people and has its power limited in some way, in part by a free pass and the individual rights of the people. Finally, representatives are able to aggregate the differing demands of people in a more coherent and politically logically programmed.
Next, we will discuss about characteristics of democracy. Firstly, elected representative, which means citizens can exercise their right to make political decisions through their elected representative in a form of government known as elected democracy. As a result, individuals select their agents body delegates. Secondly, independent judiciary. It is the principle of power separation serve as the foundation for a law and order democratic society. Judicial authority ensures justice in conflicts between individuals and the government. Thirdly, civil liberties. The point is common freedoms are the privilege that exists when the public authority doesn't meddle for arbitrary reasons. People are free to speak, write, marry, identify themselves, and vote as they please in a truly free society. The government and its agency need only avoid restricting these liberties to guarantee these freedoms, at least in theory. Fourthly, organized opposition party. It is to maintain power, autocrat frequently attempt to co-opt specific opposition party leaders. Although the autocrats' co-optation of opposition party leaders is recognized in the literature as an important survival tactic, there is no systematic investigation into why some opposition party leaders are co-opted while others are not, especially when they are ideologically distinct from autocratic incumbents. Lastly, rule of law. The instrument, process, foundation, practice, or standard that maintains the reasonableness of all inhabitants under the careful focus of the law, get a non-arbitrary sort of government, and even more overall hinders the conflicting usage of power.
Firstly, the advantages of the democracy is the government of the people. These advantages means that this form of political system involves the representation of the people in the government by choosing their representative based on their own wishes through free and fair elections. For example, many countries have adopted this form of governance, and it has become the best national administration of this century. Secondly, looking after the interests of the people, this feature of democracy is the most valued. Power lies in the capacity of ordinary people, and most importantly, this system speaks of responsibility towards the people. This system maintains the social, economic and political interests of ordinary people as the most important priority. In other words, this advantage must take care of all interests of the people, regardless of aspect, namely in terms of security, the national economy, people's living needs, people health and others. Thirdly, the advantage of the democracy is that the government is becoming more stable. This system has proven to be the most stable form of government. This has been the most efficient because the term of office of representative in government bodies have been fixed. This is because they want to give people more time to work so that they can reduce the employment rate in Malaysia. Lastly, the people and the government can make good decisions. Under other form of the system, such as monarchy, decisions are taken according to their own preference. In a dictatorship, the dictator make all the decisions and no one else gets involved without concern for the welfare of the people. However, democracy involves many levels of different people participating in decision making, which makes it an efficient decision making system.
Next, I would like to talk about disadvantage of democracy. The first disadvantage of democracy is potential for slow decision making. Democratic processes involve extensive debates, consultations, and negotiations, which can lead to delays in reaching consensus and taking decisive action. While these deliberations are intended to ensure inclusivity and representation, they can hinder the prompt response to urgent issues or emergency. Another disadvantage is the principle of majority rule, which can marginalize minority groups. In a democratic system, decisions are made based on the will of the majority, often leaving the interests and concerns of minority populations overlooked or neglected. This can result in the tyranny of the majority, where the rights and perspective of minority groups are suppressed or ignored. Freedom of democracy is susceptible to the influence of populism. Charismatic leaders or emotional appeals can sway public opinion, leading to policy driven by short-term popular sentiment rather than sound long-term strategies. This can result in policies that are not in the best interest of the nation as a whole or that neglect the complexities of certain issues. And the next of the disadvantages is polarization and gridlock are also inherent risks in a democratic system. When political parties or factions become entrenched in their position and refuse to compromise or collaborate, legislative progress can be hindered. This can make it challenging to pass necessary reforms or make headway on critical issues, potentially stalling societal progress. Democracy also raises concern about the expertise of political leaders. While democratic systems rely on the election of leaders based on popular support, these individuals may not always possess the necessary qualification or expertise for effective governance. This can lead to policy decisions that are uniform, influenced by personal or partisan interests, or lacking in-depth analysis. The next disadvantages is campaign financing and corruption pose additional challenges to democracy. The need for funding in elections opens the door to potential influence from wealthy individuals or interest groups. This can distort the democratic process, as candidates may be beholden to those who financially support their campaigns, potentially leading to corruption, favoritism, or policy that prioritize the interests of specific groups over the broader population. And lastly, for the disadvantages of democracy is the fixed election cycles in democratic system can foster a short-term focus among politicians. In order to appeal voters and secure re-election, politicians may prioritize policies and initiatives that offer immediate benefits, often neglecting long-term solutions or systematic issues that require sustained attention and effort. So for the conclusion, it is important to note that the sustainability of democracy in Malaysia or any country is a matter of ongoing debate and subject to different viewpoints. Some argue that democracy allows for the representation of empowerment of the people, fostering accountability and promoting social progress. Others may argue that alternative system or modifications to democracy could better address the specific needs and complexities of a diverse society like Malaysia. Ultimately, the sustainability of democracy in Malaysia or any country depends on the collective will and efforts of its citizens and policymakers to address the challenges, uphold democratic principles, and continuously improve the democratic processes to ensure that they meet the aspirations and needs of the people. So that's all from us. Thank you.